The Anglo-Iraqi War was a British-led Allied military campaign during the Second World War against the Kingdom of Iraq, which was ruled by Rashid Ali, who had seized power in the 1941 Iraqi coup with assistance from Germany and Italy. The campaign resulted in the downfall of Rashid Ali's government, the reoccupation of Iraq by the British, and the return to power of the region of Iraq, being the Hashemite dynasty, after only a 29-day campaign. Good job, Britain, record-breaking campaigns here. During the time leading up to the coup, however, Rashid Ali's supporters had been informed that Germany was willing to recognize the independence of Iraq from the British Empire, and Germany primarily sent Luftwaffe aid in the form of almost 30 planes, and Special Staff F, which was a covert military mission to support Arab nationalists against the Allies. Rashid Ali's government also believed that Germany would be sending more aid, however this would not come, but I will explain this later on. But first, more context. Vichy France also provided Axis aid to Rashid Ali's government with material deliveries, with the first one containing 15,500 rifles with 6 million rounds of ammunition, 200 machine guns, and 900 belts of ammunition, along with 4 77mm field guns with 10,000 shells. 2 additional deliveries would be made on the 26th and 28th of May, which included 8 155mm guns with 6,000 shells, 354 machine pistols, 30,000 grenades, and an additional 32 trucks. Italy also wanted to get in on the trend of the Axis supporting Rashid Ali because Mussolini had already been humiliated in North Africa by Great Britain. Italy took out their rage against Churchill by sending 12 whole planes to Iraq, which accomplished very little other than downing 2 British planes. Thanks, spaghetti. Also at this time, Germany and the Soviet Union were still allies due to the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact of 1939, which was reflected in Soviet actions regarding Iraq. On May 12th, the Soviet Union officially recognized Rashid Ali's National Defense Government, and Iraqi-Soviet exchange of ambassadors was occurring during this time, which really isn't important to the video, but I thought it was interesting to bring up. Anyway, after Rashid Ali's coup took place, things in Iraq weren't going really so well, and plans were drawn up to supply troops, but the German High Command was pretty hesitant and required permission from Turkey for passage. In the end, the Luftwaffe found the conditions in Iraq intolerable, as spare parts were not available, and the quantity of aircraft fuel was far below the Luftwaffe's requirements. With each day passing, fewer aircraft remained serviceable, and ultimately all Luftwaffe personnel were evacuated on the last remaining Heinkel HE-111 in Iraq, and Rashid Ali's government fell because they sucked. Effects of the Anglo-Iraqi War on World War II were that the British Iraq Force was able to quickly and easily defeat Rashid Ali's government and restore the Hashemite kingdom. The Axis lost its temporary ally in the region, and the British had restored their supply line to North Africa, so the good guys won out. Changes to make it an alternate timeline so that the Axis can provide more aid to Rashid Ali's government in Iraq in World War II would be if Turkey gave Germany permission to pass through so they didn't have to rely on support going through Iraq from Vichy, French, Syria, Lebanon. Now with this in mind, Turkey will be still remaining neutral, but by allowing more Axis support to pass through, it's going to put the country in a tricky spot, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Additionally, things are going to get pretty murky for Iraq because just because Germany is sending more troops doesn't necessarily mean that Rashid Ali's government is going to live. But first, how is this going to impact the Anglo-Iraqi War? Since there's more German support in Iraq, an obvious impact is that there will be more Allied diversion. But what Germany could do to provide definitely wouldn't save Rashid Ali's government from falling, as it really sucked and wasn't too popular. Additionally, the Germans found Iraq to be completely inhospitable for Luftwaffe operations, as like I said, their planes needed constant maintenance, and had many problems that wouldn't be solved with more units in the area. It would really only keep the main British force in the country for another month or a little bit longer. But the real change in this timeline is the troop delay in North Africa in summer of 1941, which will have some more lasting impacts on the war. If the Anglo-Iraqi War continues through June of 1941, the British may delay Operation Battle Axe, which was the British disastrous attempt to relieve Tobruk, and it would save almost 100 tanks to be used in a later attempt. However, the Axis wouldn't be in much better position in the Western Desert Campaign as well. Keep in mind that by sending more to Iraq, the Axis will be enduring a greater cost than the Allies to have to keep the conflict in the country going, and those resources would have been taken away from other fronts, such as plans for invading the Soviet Union, or more likely from supplying North Africa. The best case scenario for the Axis is that Operation Crusader is delayed, and the Axis will hold on to more of North Africa a little bit longer. However, that again doesn't mean that the Axis are in any better of a position. In fact, without Operation Battle Axe going the way that it did in our timeline, the British may perform even better against the Axis during the North Africa campaign, as they'll have more tanks during an alternate Operation Crusader, and may deal an even more crippling blow towards the Axis powers. Turkish neutrality during World War II benefited both the Axis and the Allies in our timeline. For the Axis, Turkey closed its ports to the Soviet Union, and for the Allies, Turkey was a country that physically blocked the Axis from reaching Middle Eastern oil. But since Turkey had allowed German troops to pass into Iraq in this alternate timeline, things are going to be a little more complicated. The Turkish government will want to remain neutral, and would make any attempt to create a deal with the Allies, which likely includes ending raw material sales to the Axis, and post-war there will most likely be Turkish reparations in some way, shape, or form. So overall, I personally would say little changes in the grand scheme of World War II and Iraqi history. North Africa may be slightly more drawn out, and Turkey is in a pretty complex position during the war, where their continued neutrality will have to be proven, and the country will have to favor the Allies on more issues. But perhaps Turkish reparations to Iraq after the war may change the Iraqi economic recession and remove some conditions for the 1958 July 14th revolution, but who knows? That's beyond my ability to predict. This is just one possible scenario. What do you think would have happened had the Axis provided more aid to Iraq during World War II? Write in the comments, and thank you for watching.